Hey everyone, finally back in the saddle again. I sorry for the long hiatus. I was a little sick for a couple of weeks there. Had a upper respiratory thing, nothing serious, just a springtime cold. And anyway, I was sounding a little hoarse and croaky and not really suitable for reading out loud. And I thought, well, uh, I've been out of touch for a while. I thought I'd come out here and try to finish up this reading this book, Waking the Dead by John Eldridge. And we're down to chapter 12. And um, so hope you're all well. I hear some of you have been sick with earaches and colds and whatnot and all the squirrely weather. So hope you're feeling better and maybe sounding better than I am. So anyway, here we go. This is chapter 12, Waking the Dead by John Eldridge. And title of this chapter is Like the Treasures of the Kingdom. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. See, darkness covers the earth, and thick darkness is over the peoples. But the Lord rises upon you, and his glory appears over you. Isaiah 60. And then my soul awaking with the morn shall be waking joy eternally newborn. George MacDonald. Probably going to have to take several sips throughout here. And so bear with me. I still have some sniffles too, so I apologize in advance. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he's been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave cloths and let him go. John 11. When Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split. The tombs broke open and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many people. Matthew 27. Arise. I woke in the desert on Easter morning. Through the window of my tent, I could see branches of the pinyon pine and the sharp tines of the yucca, and beyond them soft rolling sandstone and full daylight in the color of oatmeal, but glowing golden now with the first light. Birds were up, rejoicing, flitting to and fro in the pinyon, but thanks be to God, not another living thing could be seen or heard. I had awakened on my 5th morning in the Arches National Park, hidden near the northeast corner of Utah. But it could have been Palestine around AD 33. The desert is not a wasteland as many people wrongly picture when they hear the word, but a vibrant place full of grasses, cacti, juniper, and pinyon, and wildflowers scatter across the landscape. A place where you can find puma prints in the soft, wet sand down in the canyons, where springs nearly reach the surface. A place of life in many ways. It was cold enough to see my breath when I stepped out of the tent, so I cranked the Coleman stove to set water boiling for coffee and cocoa before I roused the boys, cocooned, head and all, down in their sleeping bags, savoring moments that were mine alone. I climbed to the top of the rocks behind the camp to drink in the vast beauty of the desert at dawn. To the west, gigantic mesas, Navajo sandstone, rose like ancient fortresses from the desert floor, their sheer red cliffs radiating back the rays that had not reached the sands at my feet. I turned to the east to take the glad warmth of the new day head on, surprised to see the La Salle Mountains covered in snow 100 miles away. My heart was at home in this place of wild beauty and staggering vistas. But it was an awkward time to have come. On this resurrection morning, Stacy was in Los Angeles, holding the hand of her dying mother. She would be gone in less than a month. Strange timing to up and go camping, but God brought me here. Like many pilgrims down through the ages, I discovered my spiritual life in the desert, found solitude and silence in the Mojave of Southern California, far from the numbing sameness and suffocating density of the suburbs that warehouse millions of people. The desert awakened my heart, and I discovered freedom of spirit walking around the arroyos for hours upon end, haunted by the stark beauty and the thin veil of heaven there. No wonder Moses, Elijah, and John the Baptist spent their free time in the desert. And though the desert meant so much to me, spoke to my heart, I left it behind many years ago. I know how life pickpockets you of the things, of these things, slipping them away so subtly you never even notice that they're gone. I simply stopped going. In the spring of 2001, Stacy was making frequent trips to Southern California to be with her mom, who we were losing to multiple myeloma. I was doing my best for the boys and the Bills back in Colorado. To be honest, we were simply waiting for the call when we would jump a flight and attend Jane's funeral. So I didn't believe it was God when first I heard him say, go to Moab, go to the desert. It took several confirmations to get my attention. At a coffee house, I ran into a young gal who, in the midst of chit-chat, simply dropped into the conversation that she'd just returned from Moab. I did sort of a double take, then said calmly, "How was it?" "Great," she said. "You have to go." The next day, I was on the phone with a pastor from Denver, making plans for a men's retreat. "I just got back from Moab," he said out of the blue. It was awesome. I'm simply confessing that I came to the desert born not on the wings of my own wisdom, but hesitantly, reluctantly, pushed along by God. Moab. Okay. The boys are missing mom, and the distraction would be good, and there's really nothing more we can do from here anyway, except pray. Which I might give more devotion to out in the wild, and so we came. I was surprised at the level of warfare I had to fight through. For about 5 hours of the drive, I was forced to bring the work of Christ against an overwhelming oppression that made it hard to concentrate. A really awful veil over my spirit. Over a camping trip? It seems so stupid. But the thief comes to steal and kill and destroy any movement toward freedom and life. We battled through, got there late, and discovered that God had held the last campsite for us. I'm not sure I can even put into words all that Jesus restored to me in those 5 days, but some part of my heart, long forgotten, was given back, along with some deep words I desperately needed. I came alive in the vast wild desert, and it began to sink in. My heart matters to God. My heart has always mattered to him. It is one thing to say we believe that. It is another thing to discover it's true. This was a gift unique to my heart, and it could not have been given in any other place. I woke that Easter morning more alive than I have been in a long, long time. Treating your heart for the treasure that it is. Above all else, guard your heart. Proverbs 4:23. We usually hear this with a sense of keep an eye on that heart of yours in the way you'd warn a deputy watching over some dangerous outlaw or a bad dog the neighbors let run wild. Don't let him out of your sight. Having so long believed our hearts are evil, we assume the warning is to keep us out of trouble. So we lock up our hearts and we throw away the key and then try to get on with our living. But that isn't the spirit of the command at all. It doesn't say guard your heart because it's criminal. It says guard your heart because it is the wellspring of your life. Because it is a treasure. Because everything else depends on it. How kind of God to give us this warning. Like someone's entrusting to a friend something precious to him with the words, be careful with this. It means a lot to me. Think of your heart that way. What if God said to you, take care of this? It means a lot to me. Do you hear what he's saying here? Above all else? Good grief. We don't even do it once in a while. We might as well leave our life savings on the seat of the car with the windows rolled down. We're that careless with our hearts. If not for the careless heart, sang Roy Orbison, it might be the anthem for our lives. Things would be different. I would be farther along. My faith would be much deeper. My relationships so much better. My life would be on the path God meant for me, if not for my careless heart. I live completely backward. All else is above our hearts. I'll wager that caring for your heart isn't even a category you think in. Let's see. I've got to get the kids to soccer. The car needs to be dropped off at the shop, and I need to take a couple of hours for my heart this week. Couple of hours. Probably sounds like probably sounds unbiblical even after all we've covered. Seriously now, what do you know on a daily basis? What do you do on a daily basis to care for your heart? Okay, that wasn't fair. How about weekly, monthly, even? Yes, we do have a cultural scrap of this so-called vacation. Most working class folks get a week or two off a year. And that is the only time they actually plan to do something that might be good for their souls. Or they squander the scrap on some place like Miami, as a poor man spends his last dollar on a lottery ticket. And you know how it goes when you get back. The attitude among your family, friends, and colleagues is usually something like, great, you're back. Hope you had a good time. And because, boy, everything fell apart while you were gone. And we're expecting, now that you're rested up, that you'll really put your nose to the grindstone. How often does that happen to you? Whatever that week gave you is devoured in a matter of moments or days. But God intends that we treat our hearts as the treasures of the kingdom, ransomed at tremendous cost. I'll read that again. God intends that we treat our hearts as the treasures of the kingdom, ransomed at tremendous cost, as if they really do matter and matter deeply. Your heart matters deeply, people. Listen to what he's saying. Storing up to overflow. If then you are wise, you will show yourself rather as a reservoir than as a canal. A canal spreads abroad water as it receives it, but a reservoir waits until it is filled before overflowing, and thus, without loss to itself, it shares its superbent water. Bernard of Clairvaux. A beautiful picture. A canal runs dry so quickly, shortly after the rains subside, like a dry stream bed in the desert. But a reservoir is a vast and deep reserve of life. We are called to live in a way that we store up reserves in our hearts and then offer them from the place of abundance. Jesus said, every teacher of the law who has been instructed about the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. Matthew 13. I'm thinking, storeroom? What storeroom? The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, for out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks. Luke 6. I'm afraid I live spiritually the same way I live financially. I get a little and go spend it. I live like a canal. I look like a reservoir when the rains come, but shortly after, I'm dried up again. My financially responsible readers have just congratulated themselves on living a more disciplined life. But may I ask, are you using those reserves to do things that nourish your heart? Many a Scrooge has filled his coffers while starving his soul. There are many canals in their church today, laments Julia Gata, but few reservoirs. One woman deeply involved in ministry wrote to me recently that she is burned out to a crackling crunch. She has been a canal. She hasn't cared for her heart. She's not alone. How would you live differently if you believed your heart was a treasure of the kingdom? This is what God tells us to do above all else, as the passage says. Last week over breakfast, I asked a small group of friends, men who fight for the hearts of others all the time, what are you doing these days to care for your heart? They fell silent. eyes roaming the room, staring at their eggs, examining their nails as if they were pondering a really good answer, but nothing ever came. I was saddened, but not surprised. Our hearts are always the first things to go. But did you know that God gives out of the abundance of his heart? One of the first things John tells us about his dear friend Jesus is that from the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. John 1:16. From God's fullness, we receive blessing. Or as Paul prays in Ephesians, a prayer that I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you, which is to say, out of the riches God has stored up in his great heart, he gives to ours. Dallas Willard reminds us. He is full of joy. Undoubtedly, he is the most joyous being in the universe. The abundance of his heart and generosity is inseparable from his infinite joy. All of the good and beautiful things from which we occasionally drink. Willard includes the sea in all its beauty, or a wonderful movie or music. God continuously experiences in all their breadth and depth and richness. Has it ever occurred to you that God is such a loving and generous person because his heart is filled like a reservoir with joy? It's because his heart is brimming with good things and experiences that God is able to love and forgive and suffer so long for mankind. The same holds true for us. Are you a delight to be with after an hour in traffic? No wonder we're so short on grace and mercy. Life drains us dry, and we just accept it as the normal way to live. We were really burned out, Stacy and I, when we headed off to this year's annual family vacation. Before we left, she told me she was done with people. I was too. Even a short conversation felt draining. Neither of us wanted to go see anyone. We gave some serious thought to becoming hermits. Enough of this community stuff. Living alone in a hut in the Kalahari sounded like paradise. God's remedy was 8 days in Southeast Alaska, photographing grizzly bears, sea kayaking with humpback whales, eating more than our share of great food and drinking in breathtaking views in every direction. We got home late on Saturday night, and I woke Sunday morning to hear Stacy chatting away on the phone with a friend. She called another and another all day long, just catching up, she said with a smile. As an act of love. Caring for our own hearts isn't selfish. It's how we begin to love. Yes, we care for our hearts for the sake of others. Does that sound like a contradiction? Not at all. What will you bring to others if your heart is empty, dried up, penned down? Love is the point. You can't love without your heart, and you can't love well unless your heart is well. When it comes to the whole subject of loving others, you must know this. How to handle your own heart is how you will handle others. This is the wisdom behind Jesus urging us to love others as we love ourselves. Mark 12. A horrible command, as C.S. Lewis points out. If the self were simply to be hated, if you dismiss your heart, you will end up dismissing theirs. If you expect perfection of your heart, you will raise that same standard for them. If you manage your heart for efficiency and performance, that is what you'll pressure them to be. But you protest, I have lots of grace for other people. I'm just hard on myself. I tried the same excuse for years. It doesn't work. Even though we may try to be merciful toward others while we neglect or beat ourselves up, they can see how we treat our own hearts, and they will always feel the treatment will be the same for them. They're right. Eventually, inevitably, we will treat them poorly too. You know this without knowing that you did. There are certain people you would never go to with a problem, would never call at 2 a.m. when you were struggling under some burden or loss. Why not? You know they would handle your heart well. Some folks I know won some airline tickets, good for travel to any place in the world. That was 15 years ago. I still haven't used them. Would you ask them for advice on caring for your heart? Don't you sense they would say, there's no time for that? Yes, there is a place for sacrifice. And yes, I know a lot of very selfish things have been done under the excuse that I'm taking care of my heart. I've heard divorces and affairs justified that way. But the fact that someone abuses an idea doesn't make it a bad idea. People overeat too. Does that mean you shouldn't enjoy eating? Some pretty awful things have been done in the name of Christianity. Does that mean you shouldn't be a Christian? Don't let others' bad choices shape your life. Care for your heart above all else, not only for your own sake, not even primarily for your own sake. Do it in order to love better, for the sake of those who need you, and they need you. Remember, this is our most desperate hour. I'm going to stop there for today. The next section is as an act of devotion, and that will be the second half of chapter 12. And after that, that will conclude the book. We have about maybe 6 or 8 pages left. I believe that I took photos of the daily prayer for freedom, and I put that in the Telegram group message. But if you're following on Facebook or YouTube, something like that, I'll photograph these again and maybe post them out on Facebook, and that way you can have a copy of it. So I hope you're having a great day. I'm hoping that this book has spoken to your heart. It has always, every time I've read it, spoken to mine. And it always reminds me to be careful with my heart, and as though it were given to me by someone else who cares a great deal about it. Think about that this week. In those moments where you're not treating your heart well, it is difficult to love others when you don't love your own heart, when you don't take care of your own heart. So just give that some thought. I hope you'll go back and maybe re-listen to some of these chapters, and that you'll take away some life lessons from it. So have a great day. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.